We go. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Today I have Aja Hammerly with me today, and we are going to be going through her LinkedIn profile. So for this week's series, in fact, I'm going to share my screen here and bring right up Aja's LinkedIn profile. And so Aja and I were chatting a little bit prior to starting the recording here. And really the key thing that she is looking for in terms of guidance and feedback is really moving the takeaway from her profile from an individual contributor level up to a director, a leadership level, so that you see that, and that's one of the takeaways. And then in addition, there's some key themes that she wanted to have come across. Definitely that leadership, the creativity, particularly kind of in an unconventional creativity that she brings, and the authenticity. Is there anything else that I missed, Aja, that you want to make sure to add to the list?
No, that's it. I'm just trying to polish up the LinkedIn presence and, make it appropriate for where I want to be going in my career.
Awesome.
And also make it easy for folks who might be interested in joining my team at some point to get a good feel for how I approach leadership and just what kind of person I am to work with.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Well, let's just start at the top, because the first thing that we'll always look at is the profile picture, because that's what's going to come up and that's what's going to show up every time you comment, post, all of that. And so you have such a friendly, beautiful profile picture. The only feedback that I would give you is that it's very youthful. I think your picture is fresh and youthful. And if you're looking to be moving into this kind of directorship kind of look, then that might be a place that it's time for a new headshot. And so typically I'll find, and you know this too, that as people get into the leadership, director, executive level, they'll invest in having someone do professional headshots with, nice outdoor settings. And so that might be something that you could take away. And I think just doing that alone give you some great options and a really good look that still lets your personality shine through while also looking a little bit more kind of leadership as opposed to the youthful, fresh look that you have right now. So that's one thing. The second thing then is this real estate that you have available on the cover image.
Yeah.
So I know that you are a storyteller and a speaker, but the question for you now, given where you are right now, is that the impression? Because my impression in looking at this is instantly I'm like, oh, well, I see the storytelling piece, but I'm not sure if this still connects with your desire from a leadership piece. So you can decide, like a lot of times what I'll suggest that people do is, if you wanted to use a picture of yourself speaking, do you have one where you're speaking to a group? And so the impression that is come across is that it's not just Aja by herself, individual, but, oh, I see the collaboration. I see the leadership. I see she's speaking to a large audience or to a team or a group. And so that might be one of the ways of bringing sort of this takeaway, because people land on LinkedIn profiles and they usually don't stay there too long. They'll scan it, and so on these images there's just a quick glance of a takeaway that's sometimes more of a subconscious takeaway than just an intentional one. And so if you do have something like that, that might be a great option. Awesome to have yourself in it. If you don't, then you can look for some other images that you like that for you represent leadership or represent kind of this essence of unconventional creativity as you define it. So that could be another thing. And then the next thing that you have this awesome opportunity is your headline. And so right now you have a few keywords, which you probably have had on there for a while. And so the question for you is, now that you're kind of in this place of moving into more of this directorship, leadership, I probably would suggest that you update your keywords. It shows the Stegosaurus, it gives your personality and your quirkiness, and that's fun and it's catchy. And I would say that if that still resonates to you, keep it, because it's so the antithesis of one of my rants that I posted on LinkedIn a while back about like kind of just this corporate-y language, that we, driven executive and all of this. So I love that your personality shines through. It's just that because you have some new desires, I would definitely encourage you to add to your keyword list.
Okay. So is it better to do keywords, or is it better to do kind of like a one-line mission statement? That's one of the things that I've been wondering.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm going to say it is a personal preference. Like when I'm
Oh,
working
okay.
with clients in personal branding, one of the things that we do together is to create what I call a brand statement, which is essentially that one sentence summary of who you are, what you do, and how you do it. Um, but if that's not something that you have or you don't want to communicate that way, listing keywords is perfectly fine as long as they tell a story of what you want. So like having, unconventional creativity as a keyword, 2 keywords, that's awesome. That's cool because that's more than just creativity. Even authentic leadership, you could add that in. So now I know a little bit more about you than just the word leader. And so, so be thinking about how you want to use that space that is up leveling to the level kind of where you are right now. So that would be another piece. You already have a ton of connections, so that's fabulous. And then in the about section, this is an opportunity. Yeah, what were you going to say?
I don't know what to do with this box.
Well, I will give you some tips on this. Here's what I suggest in the about section. I think of it like a 5-step recipe. The
Okay.
first, because I just clicked more, obviously, as you saw, but people may not ever click more if it doesn't catch their attention. And that's why my suggestion is that you start with like your point of view. So what do you believe that leaders should be? Like, I believe that leaders need to be authentic and creative, or creative in unconventional ways. They need to put their, whatever you think is your point of view of like what the greatest leaders do. And boom, you just put that sentence as a standalone. Now you've caught my attention, because what will happen when you list a point of view is that other people that your point of view resonates with, they will want to know more about you. So to your point about hiring people for your team,
yeah,
this is great because you want them to know what your point of view is, and they will, some will resonate with that and some might not. And guess what? That's okay.
Yep.
And so what that does is that it invokes a sense of curiosity or interest, or, oh, that's a little different. And so then they want to click more. So the step 1 is having the point of view. You can use, like, if you have a favorite quote or a powerful phrase, you could do that instead, but something that grabs, something that's a hook. And then the second piece is that you want to give a little bit, just a short bit of a background story. And I suggest, like you've done what most people do, which is kind of go through the sequence of what you've done throughout your career. But think about the about section as an online conversation. And since you're a storyteller and you've already said this about yourself, tell me a story about you. So like I had a client, for example, that his area of business was sales. The story that he said in terms of his background was, he said, I've been a salesman since I was 9 years old, selling eggs from our family's chicken, coop to our neighbors, and so it was different and unique. And I'm like, oh, I get to know about him as a person rather than just the titles or the things that he's done. So think about if there's kind of an interesting step or an interesting piece throughout your career history that you could tee off of. And just give that as a brief story. One of the things you want to think about doing when you're in the about section is to have a lot of white space. So separate sentences on their own, or have maybe 1 or 2 sentences and then start a new paragraph. Because when people are consuming and reading this and just scanning quickly, they'll be able to take away your points much easier than if they're in a dense paragraph. So step 2 is your background. Then step 3 would be to call out a greatest hit or an achievement or a success or a win that you feel really proud of, just because it gives, there are people that are going to land on your page that are very results driven, and that might be the thing that catches their attention, especially if they were considering coming onto your team. It's like, oh, okay, Aja is someone who has great leadership and creativity, but she's also someone that can get the stuff done. Like there's a metric or a bullet point that says, this was one of my things I was the most proud of. So you just list a highlight or an achievement. And then the fourth step is then to go on to kind of where you are right now. And that's what you've actually already done in your second paragraph here. You've talked about what your cornerstone of management philosophy is and what you strive for. And this is great. The only thing, if you keep this whole sentence, Aja, I would suggest that you break it up.
Okay.
You either break it up into more than one big paragraph, or take another look at it now, and given where you are and what you want people to take away, is there some editing that you would want? Like if you took what you've got right now as 6 sentences, could you say the essence of what you want people to know about you in your management philosophy in 3 instead?
Okay.
So you may or may not be able to do that. If you can't, then just definitely break it apart. But really it's kind of what's the main takeaway. That's the fourth step of what who you are as a leader and what you are doing right now. And so be thinking always on your about section more about what you want the others to take away. So if I'm a reader and I'm landing, why should I care?
Yep.
I may not care about you being a developer, a tester, a system admin, and all that kind of stuff, but I would care about your philosophy of transparency and trust.
Yep.
So that can be sometimes an editing tool too. If I'm filtering based off of what I want what others will be taking away, then that can be a way of talking about it. Ends up being more about them and like kind of the what's in it for me concept, as opposed to just you telling a background of what you've done. And then the last step, the fifth step, is simply to list a summary or a listing of your key strengths, skills, competencies, values, strengths, etc. Those kinds of things that you choose to list, because I know you have a lot of really great skills. And what that does is just at a glance, I can get a really good impression of all of the expertise and skills and talents that you have as a leader just really quickly, rather than having to sort of read through paragraphs of information. Also, by calling out those key things, those key skills, abilities, competencies, etc., if others are doing keyword searches, those will come up in the keyword searches as well. So that'll come up in your headline. It will also come up in your whole profile. So that's another thing that you can do, and it's easy to just list those out. Any questions about that kind of 5-point process?
No, that helps a lot. That helps a lot. And I think there's a lot here that I can rework, edit down, and then put into that format, and it will be significantly more compelling.
Yeah, exactly. And feel free to use, if you want to, you can bold, you can use cap letters if you choose to. Because again, if people are scanning quickly, which they are, they'll take away words that are like, if you look through my about section, there's a lot of all cap words, because I know that those are the key things that people are wanting to take, or they are the key things that I want people to take away. So that can be another tactic of making sure that your message is getting across. You've got awesome. So in terms of your featured, you can look at that. It is great that you have some really unique talent that you can have featured here. So I would say just kind of take a fresh look at what you've just deciding you want to feature, and see if it's still something that is relevant for what you want now, from kind of moving into this leadership and direct potential. And if so, keep it. If not, then edit that to something else.
Okay.
And then in terms of activity, here's where I have people invite people to be really intentional, because back to those key things that you wanted people to take away: authenticity, your leadership, this creativity, particularly unconventional creativity. Like what you want to have happen is, if I were to look at your activity over, say, a 6-month period of time, and I was just scanning through it, would I see a theme emerge that you're writing, you're sharing, you're liking, you're commenting on things related to phenomenal leadership or posts related to really unique, unconventional, creative solutions. And so a lot of people don't think about this necessarily, and their activity is just very haphazard.
Yep.
And so the ideal is you want to just be intentional about that and see a theme emerge of what you want to have people know about you. So that can be something to be thinking about on your activity. And then on your experience, I mean, this is a place like ideally you probably want a little bit more in your experience section than you have. You have a reference to it, which is better than nothing. But if you want people to know a little bit more about your, like if they're coming and they may be thinking about joining your team, giving them a little bit more information about what your team does. You could actually even switch the language potentially to say, it's more like, here's what we do.
Okay.
So like right now, the language is, you know, that I'm managing a team or this is what I do. So it's more like kind of first person oriented. One consideration, if you are wanting people to scan through this and you're thinking about hiring the best talent, is writing from a sense of we. And so that I have a sense, even just reading, oh, I get it. I see what she does. I see what her organization is responsible for. And then this is another place where I'm sure that you have some great wins in the work that you've done. Like if you have a few key bullet points of some big successes that your organization has been responsible for or has that are outcomes or results that you guys have done over the years, then those are great things to call out because they provide proof and validity of you leading a really strong team. And of course, you're going to get people that are completely results minded. And that's the piece that they may lock onto is the results, the numbers, the percentages, the customer sat improvements, developer relations.
Yep.
Stuff. And so that's kind of the same theme across all of these. And so, you know, you've got information on here, which is great. But switching it to more of like, here's what we've done. This is what our group is responsible for, and then some key wins. And so that's great. So you can follow that same kind of format throughout your other jobs as applicable. I would say not as necessary for some of the earlier jobs, like when, you know, years ago when you were at Expedia and such, but you just kind of get an opportunity if you're going to go in and do an update, just to kind of take an editing lens and go through and say, do I still want to say all this stuff?
Okay.
Education is great. You can take the years off a lot. Most people are doing that now because what's most important is that you have your degree, not necessarily the year that you got it. So that can come off. And then skills and endorsements is one that people sometimes forget about, and it just sort of organically happens. So the question for you is you've got software development, Ruby, and Ruby on Rails. Are those the key 3 skills that you want to be known for?
No, not right now.
Okay, awesome. So then this is a place where you get to edit because you can, and you can actually just reorder skills. So go in and choose something about leadership for sure. You know, you could just choose leadership itself or organizational leadership or whatever you want to put and move that up into the top 3 stack. So that when I look, and then people will be endorsing you and that will get endorsed over time. So that's because most people are not going to click show more. They're just going to scan and take the top 3 that are there. So make sure that those are the 3 you want to be known for. And then in terms of recommendations, this is a fabulous place for social proof. And you have one and you've given one, which is great. I recommend that people kind of keep this current. So ideally go out and ask a few colleagues or past bosses and clients, etc., if they're willing to do a recommendation. And a little tip on that, if you're willing to reciprocate, most people are very happy to have a recommendation on their LinkedIn profile. And if you do one for me, I do one for you, that kind of thing, people are usually really responsive in doing that. So having 2 or 3 every 6 to 12 months is a good rule of thumb. So that would be something to add for you as well. And then you have a great that you've added the accomplishments section. So this is great. And so this would be like, you know, you've got some super strong projects. All of your speaking is here. If there are other accomplishments, I know this section allows you to add a lot of different things. You can add projects, patents, awards, accomplishments, languages, all kinds of different things. And so just take another look at this and see if there's some additional accomplishments that are like relevant that you may have wanted, you may want to add.
Yeah, there's nothing here from my time at Google, and I've been at Google for 6 years. So yeah, I need to update this section.
Okay, excellent. Well, you have an action item on that one then. And then the only other thing that I'm not seeing on here, if applicable, is if you have done volunteer work or you've been on boards or leading women's organizations or other kinds of things, add that volunteer section in here. That's a good one. A lot of times people will really see that and they may have something in common with you just from something that you have done outside of work. So if that's applicable, then add that in. And then on the interests, this is another one, not a huge thing, but again, we want kind of a theme to emerge here. And so are you following leadership thought leaders? Are you following companies that are really doing unique, unconventionally creative things in the marketplace? And so you want to just take a look at the things that you're following. And sometimes these things kind of just collect over time. And so you could just go back and say, do I still want to be following these? So you can unfollow any of these that you may not want to show up on your interest and go out and find some new things that you want to follow or thought leaders that you want to follow. And that way you'll not only be getting the things that they're posting on their feed, but it also will kind of, it puts a statement in about you and the interests that you have as well. So that kind of rolls through the whole LinkedIn profile. Aja, do you, before we close off here, any questions that you have?
No, this was great. This was super useful because I didn't really know how to navigate this. And now I have some concrete things that I can use to guide how I maintain my profile going forward.
Fabulous.
So that's awesome.
All right, good. Well, I'm going to stop here. So it was great. Let me stop the share and stop.